The Executive Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodríguez, advances with her agenda in the framework of her tour in China, which aims to strengthen and promote bilateral relations and brotherhood. In Indonesia, the Asean-China Summit concludes with a meeting between the Secretary General of the bloc and the Chinese Premier Li Qian. The first African Climate Summit ended in Kenya with continental leaders issuing the Nairobi Declaration. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Spain declassified documents related to the coup d'etat that ended the government of Salvador Allende in Chile in 1973. The materials were handed over on Tuesday in Washington by the permanent observer of Spain to the US, Carmen Monton, to the country's permanent representative to the Organization of American States, OSCE, Sebastián Kraljevic, in an attempt to recover the democratic memory of the 50th anniversary of one of the most terrible episodes in Chilean and Latin American history. According to Monton, the documents in question are preserved in the archives of the permanent representation to the European Union, all relating to the 1973 coup and Chile's relations with the US, corresponding to the years 1972, 1973, and 1974. In Peru, the demolition of a wall that divides the wealthy neighborhood of La Molina from the port district of Villa María del Triunfo moves forward after a ruling from the Constitutional Court. Workers tore down the 1.5-meter-high pirca, or wall, in Lima after the Peruvian court ruled that the structure was discriminatory. The barrier was built in 1980 and has been extended at different times up to the present day. However, the Constitutional Court's ruling affirmed that the wall affects the right to free transit and harms human dignity.
We are complaining because at the moment they built that wall, it was as if we were marginalized. We are all Peruvians and we shouldn't do that. So that's why I think they are taking it out now.
The president-elect of Guatemala, Bernardo Arévalo, announced on Tuesday that the Supreme Electoral Tribunal handed over the credentials that confirms him as the head of state for the 2024-2028 period, starting next January 14th. The president of the tribunal, Irma Palencia, handed the accreditation to Arévalo, the winner of the ballot of last August 20th. On the other hand, Magistrate Ranulfo Rojas accredited Karine Herrera as the vice president. The transition of power began last Monday at the executive headquarters, where the outgoing ruler, Alejandro Giammattei, received Arévalo in a private ceremony in which also participated Luis Almagro, Secretary General of the Organization of American States. The president-elect won the second round of the elections with a lead of close to 1 million votes over his rival, former First Lady Sandra Torres of the National Unity of Hope Party. And priests and indigenous leaders in Guatemala continue protesting against outgoing President Alejandro Giammattei and the Attorney General Consuelo Porras in protest on Tuesday against the government they accuse of corruption. The protest takes place in the midst of tensions due to the persecution of the Attorney General's office against the seed party of the elected president, the Social Democrat Bernardo Arévalo. In a statement, the indigenous leaders accuse Giammattei for the institutional debacle that the country is living due to the actions of the Attorney General's office against Arévalo's party, the SEED movement. In Panama, social organizations keep protesting against the contract signed between the government and the mining subsidiary of the transnational First Quantum, declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of Justice. Various organizations, teachers, universities, workers, environmentalists, and indigenous movements marched to the National Assembly in rejection of Bill 1043 that establishes a mining concession contract between the Panamanian state and the Sociedad Minera Panamá S.A. and a mining subsidiary of the transnational First Quantum of Canadian origin in the district of Colón. The organizations began their protests last Monday and demanded that the country's parliament not to approve the bill, which was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of Justice in 2017. The Executive Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodríguez, advances with her agenda in the framework of her tour in China, which aims to strengthen and promote bilateral relations and brotherhood. Rodríguez began her work agenda at the headquarters of the BRICS Bank, located in the city of Shanghai, where she held a meeting on Wednesday with the president of the new BRICS Development Bank, Dilma Rousseff. The meeting with the former Brazilian president addressed issues of interest that aims to strengthen several strategic and commercial areas. During her stay in the country, the Venezuelan official is also expected to hold several meetings with various representatives of the Chinese government, with whom Venezuela has maintained diplomatic relations for 49 years. With this visit to the Development Bank of the Emerging Economic Bloc, which comprises Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, Caracas seeks to reaffirm the importance and role of the organization in global governance and economy. Rodríguez was received by Dilma Rousseff, who assumed the presidency of that institution from March 2023 to 2025, as well as by the Senior Advisor for Financial Affairs, Alejandro Teixeira. Authorities of the Bolivarian government have endorsed the proposal for a new and more inclusive global financial architecture that allows the development of the peoples without blackmail, as well as the de-dollarization. Our colleagues Adriana Sibori and Luis Horacio Gutierrez keep touring Venezuela, finding stories that prove that when there is a will, there is a way. This time, let's know about a familiar enterprise that makes and sells cold chicha and have a faithful clientele that looks for a delicious way to cope with the Caribbean sun and the heat in Caracas streets. And here's more about this traditional beverage, and by Carlos and Betsaide's story in the following material. Enjoy.
Breaking the ice. Then Carlos and his wife prepare every detail before leaving. This is boiled rice blended with milk. It's the base of the traditional Venezuelan chicha. Now they face a long way to set up their stall.
This business started when we were dating. I was 16 years old and he was 20. We have been selling chicha for a long time. We had a break of 5 years because we left, but we came back stronger than ever. We both do it for our children and because of our children.
During that pause, they emigrated to Peru, looking for other opportunities. They also set up their business there. But selling a frozen beverage in cold weather was not convenient. And it was also difficult trying to fit in a place with few acquaintances. The decision was to come back, and they found a different situation.
A country where the market was already moving. There was trade. There was no longer that problem of queuing for two products. And well, I've started up the business again.
And they do have a public. Some are interested in their prices, and others are just loyal customers.
Of course, here is where I come, the only one I drink. I don't drink it anywhere else. 100% good. And I could tell you because I am 75 and I've walked a lot. Get it?
The chicha is present in many Latin American countries, but the way it is prepared is different. This is chicha criolla, without fermentation. The hotter the day, the higher the sales.
Venezuelan chicha is very thick, very sweet, and it depends. Others sell it thicker, some add syrup or any other goodies they want to add. But I particularly go with the traditional, just cinnamon and condensed milk.
The indigenous people were the first to brew this type of popular drink, but with a corn base and alcohol.
Luis Horacio Gutierrez y Adriana Sibori, teleSUR, Caracas.
You can find more episodes of our series Venezuela on the Move on our YouTube and other platforms. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Indonesia, the Asean-China Summit concludes with a meeting between the Secretary General of the bloc and the Chinese Premier Li Qian. The city of Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, was the venue for the meeting between the leaders. During the meeting, the progress of the Asian-China cooperation was reviewed and its future direction was discussed. In his address, the Chinese premier praised the long-standing good neighborliness, shared progress, and prosperity between China and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. He also called for greater cooperation between China and the bloc and joint efforts to address the various global and regional challenges. And earlier on Wednesday, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arrived in Jakarta to take part in the final day of the summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. The Russian Foreign Minister's plane landed at the Soekarno-Hatta International Airport. Lavrov was warmly welcomed by the Indonesian hosts, who greeted him with a guard of honor and national dances. The minister is expected to take part in the Asian Summit and hold a series of bilateral talks in the Indonesian capital. According to the Russian Foreign Ministry, the diplomat will seek to place special emphasis on the risks posed by the increase in the tension in the Asia-Pacific region due to the expansion of NATO's zone of responsibility. Let's move on to other topics. At least 2 people were killed on Tuesday and 1 remains missing in southeast China's Fujian province after Typhoon Hauiki caused flooding and damage. The victims were rescue workers who were swept away by water in a fire truck while participating in a search and rescue operation in the village of Chile. Meanwhile, authorities are continuing to search for a missing person, according to the Fuzhou City Fire and Rescue Department. This week's typhoon is the 11th to hit southeast China this year. In Fuzhou City, in addition to the strong winds, rainfall exceeded 300 millimeters in some areas in 24 hours. On Wednesday in Greece, authorities reported 2 people died as a result of Storm Daniel, while another is still missing. The storm, battering the country for a second day, was described as the most extreme weather phenomenon ever recorded, with record levels of rainfall. In the town of Segora, torrential rains on Tuesday left a record 75.4 liters per square meter in 24 hours, almost double the previous record high recorded in 2009. The storm is currently battering the regions of Trikala, Karditsa, and Firodirye in the central Greece, where authorities have decided to preventively evacuate several localities. In Turkey, 5 people are dead and 3 more are still missing due to heavy rains affecting different parts of the country, especially in the border area with Bulgaria. After a group of 12 people was trapped in a hotel and swept away by the floodwaters, a 3rd body has been found in Kirklareli in the far northwest of the country, after the 2 which had already been found on Tuesday. For now, 6 people have been rescued and 3 others are still missing. In addition, 2 people have died in Istanbul, some 220 kilometers to the north, also due to heavy rains that have left thousands of houses flooded. Moreover, in neighboring Bulgaria, 2 other casualties have been recorded as the search for several missing persons continues. In Brazil, the death toll rose to 28 after a cyclone devastated and damaged more than 66 municipalities in southern localities. The civil defense bodies reported that the heavy rains on Tuesday left floods and several damages in the states of Rio Grande do Sul and Santa Catarina. About 4,500 citizens were evacuated from the affected areas. On the other hand, the governor of Rio Grande do Sul informed that the death toll increased to 28 after the rescue forces found of 6 corpses in the municipality of Rogacels. Also, the planning body of Rio Grande do Sul declared that this is the worst weather tragedy in the last 40 years in the state that has borders for one of the key points in land transportation of Mercosur trade.
Hundreds of people were saved, hundreds of people were rescued, but unfortunately, I have now received information that 15 bodies have been located in the town of Macum. This causes us immense pain. It raises the death toll from 6 to 21, already making it the highest death toll in a climatic event in the state of Rio Grande do Sul.
And the World Meteorological Organization announced that with the month of August, the planet recorded the 3 hottest months on record. According to the temperatures reported, this past August was the hottest one on record and the second hottest of all months after record-breaking July. Observations by the Copernicus service indicate that last August monthly sea surface temperatures were the highest on record compared to any other month of the year and stood at 20.98 degrees. They also estimate that August was 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial era between 1850 to the 1900s, and the year 2023 is so far considered the second warmest year on record after 2016. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, and there you will be able to rewatch our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. We have a final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. The first African Climate Summit ended on Wednesday after leaders issued a statement highlighting the continent's potential as a greenhouse powerhouse, titled the Nairobi Declaration. The declaration also advocated for reforms to the multilateral financial system and the development of a new global climate finance charter by 2025, and was heavy on demands that major polluters commit more resources to help the poorer nations. It urged world leaders to rally behind the proposal for a global carbon taxation regime, including a carbon tax on fossil fuel trade, maritime transport, and aviation. African countries will take the proposals in the Nairobi Declaration to a UN climate conference later this month and the COP28 summit, which begins in the United Arab Emirates in late November.
Tout a été passé en revue.
Everything has been considered. The narrative, the context, the challenges that climate change has thrown to us, and the strengthening of African leadership, and also sustainable environment development, international responsibilities to Africa, and others.
During this action-focused summit, various stakeholders, including governments, the private sector, multilateral banks, and philanthropists, have made substantial commitments totaling a remarkable US dollars 23 billion for green growth, mitigation, and adaptation efforts across Africa.
And Juan Ryunqiu, the Minister of Ecology and Environment of China, voiced his country's willingness for environmental cooperation with African nations.
In the future, China is willing to continue strengthening practical exchanges and cooperation with African countries, share China's policy, action, and experience in adapting to climate change, and make our positive contribution to enhancing global adaptability to climate change.
In other topics, on Wednesday, Israeli bulldozers demolished a dozen Palestinian structures in the Palestinian village of Anada, located near the occupied East Jerusalem area. Backed by an extensive military deployment, the crews broke through early in the morning. According to Wafa news agency, a home, numerous commercial facilities, a laundry, and auto parts store were destroyed. The Palestinian government consistently denounces the policy as aimed at expelling Palestinian inhabitants and Judaizing the area, especially Jerusalem. Over the past 10 years, from 2013 to 2022, Israeli police demolished an average of 12.4 Arab buildings in the eastern part of the city each month, to total 1,492 according to official data. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.